The first time Zara heard her baby's heartbeat, she smiled through tears. It was soft, fast, fragile, a tiny rhythm that somehow filled the silent ultrasound room with life. She placed a trembling hand over her stomach, unable to stop crying. The doctor smiled warmly. "Congratulations," she said in Korean. "Your baby is healthy." For the first time in months, hope felt real. Then, the doctor's expression changed. Someone knocked gently on the examination room door. A nurse stepped inside, whispered something into the doctor's ear, and handed her a sealed envelope. The doctor's smile disappeared. She looked at Zara, then at the envelope, then back at Zara. "Miss Zara?" "Yes. There appears to be—" She hesitated. "Another medical request filed under your name." Zara frowned. "What request?" The doctor slowly opened the envelope. Her eyes widened. Silence filled the room. Finally she whispered, "It says you've scheduled a pregnancy termination for tomorrow morning." Zara blinked. "What? You didn't?" "No." She nearly jumped off the examination bed. "I've never seen that before." The doctor looked genuinely confused. "But the paperwork includes your passport number, your immigration registration, even your signature." "My signature?" "It appears someone copied it." Zara stared at the paper. Someone wanted her baby gone. Someone had already started making plans, without asking her, without even knowing her. Her hands instinctively covered her stomach. "No." Her voice shook. "I don't care who signed those papers. I'm keeping my baby." Little did she know, that decision had already placed a target on both their lives. If stories about impossible love, powerful billionaires, and unforgettable emotional twists are your favorite, don't forget to subscribe to the Afro K Tales and turn on notifications. Every story on this channel is crafted to take you on an emotional journey you won't forget. Now, let's continue. Rain fell gently over Seoul. Thousands hurried through the busy streets beneath umbrellas. Among them walked 25-year-old Zara Okafor. Originally from Lagos, Nigeria, she had arrived in South Korea 4 years earlier carrying nothing except one suitcase, a student visa, and dreams much bigger than her circumstances. Dreams were expensive. Reality, even more so. By day, she worked at a quiet riverside cafe. At night, she attended Korean language classes. Whatever money remained after rent and tuition, she wired home to help her younger siblings finish school. Her apartment was barely larger than a storage room. The wallpaper peeled near the window. The heater only worked when it felt generous. Sometimes she ate instant noodles for 3 consecutive days just to save enough money for next month's rent. Yet customers adored her. She remembered names, favorite drinks, birthdays. She smiled even when exhausted. She apologized even when customers were rude. Some people possess a quiet kindness that survives hardship. Zara was one of them. Nobody looking at her would imagine that only 2 months earlier, she had spent one unforgettable weekend with the most dangerous man in South Korea. His name was Kang Tae-hyun. To the public, he was 36 years old, chairman of the Kang Group, owner of luxury hotels, shipping companies, artificial intelligence firms, private hospitals, television stations. Every financial magazine called him one of Asia's youngest billionaires. That was only half the truth. Behind the polished boardrooms, behind billion-dollar acquisitions, behind designer suits and perfect smiles, there existed another empire, one built in shadows, an organization powerful enough to influence politicians, disappear witnesses, and end wars before newspapers ever heard about them. People never called it the Mafia. Not allowed. They simply called it the family. And Kang Tae-hyun sat at its very center. 6'3", cold eyes, perfect posture. The type of man whose silence frightened people more than shouting ever could. Business rivals feared him. Criminals respected him. Bodyguards rarely looked directly into his eyes. There was only one thing no amount of money or power had ever given him: peace. Zara hadn't known any of that. When they met, he wasn't wearing a tailored suit. He wasn't surrounded by bodyguards. He wasn't introduced as Chairman Kang. He was simply Tae, a quiet stranger sitting alone beneath cherry blossom trees along the Han River. She remembered laughing when he failed to pronounce jollof rice. He remembered teasing her because she couldn't properly say tteokbokki. One conversation became coffee. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became 2 unforgettable days wandering through Seoul like ordinary people. No assistance, no security, no titles. Just 2 lonely souls borrowing happiness from strangers. When Monday arrived, life separated them. He asked for her number. She hesitated. She had already made one painful mistake in love back home. She wasn't ready for another, especially not with someone whose life seemed wrapped in mystery. So she smiled politely, walked away, and convinced herself she'd never see him again. 3 weeks later, she discovered she was pregnant. She never tried contacting him. How could she? She didn't even know his real name. Only Tae. No address, no company, nothing. So she made a decision. She would raise the baby alone. It wouldn't be easy, but neither had anything else in her life. The following afternoon, as Zara finished arranging coffee cups behind the cafe counter, the front door opened. 3 men entered. Black suits, black gloves, black umbrellas. Every customer instinctively looked away. The tallest man approached politely. "Miss Zara Okafor?" Her smile faded. "Yes, we've been looking for you." Something about his voice made the entire cafe feel colder. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else." "We haven't." He removed a business card. It was completely black. Only one silver emblem decorated the center. A dragon wrapped around a crown. "I've never seen that before." "You weren't supposed to." She swallowed. "What do you want?" The man looked around the cafe. "Perhaps somewhere private." "My manager is here." "So are we." Her heartbeat quickened. She reluctantly followed them outside. Rain continued falling. Parked directly across the street was a long black limousine, its windows completely tinted. The rear passenger door slowly opened. Someone stepped out. Expensive charcoal coat, black leather gloves, perfectly polished shoes. Even before she saw his face, every instinct warned her, danger. Then he removed his sunglasses. Zara froze. "Tae." He looked at her quietly. "No." His voice remained calm. "My name is Kang Tae-hyun." The world seemed to stop moving. "You." She stepped backward. "You lied to me. I omitted certain details." "Tae." "No." She laughed bitterly. "You don't get to call yourself that anymore." For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, his eyes drifted toward her stomach. He already knew. "You're pregnant." She instinctively covered her belly. "Don't." He noticed the movement. "You think I'd hurt you." "I don't know what to think." Before he could answer, another black SUV pulled beside the limousine. An elderly woman stepped out. Elegant, silver hair, diamond brooch. Her posture alone commanded absolute obedience. Every bodyguard immediately lowered his head. Even Kang Tae-hyun straightened slightly. She wasn't simply important. She was above everyone. She studied Zara from head to toe. Her gaze lingered on Zara's stomach. Then she smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone evaluating a problem. "So," the older woman said softly, "this is the girl." Zara suddenly felt something she couldn't explain. Fear. Not of the billionaire standing before her, but of the woman standing beside him. Because unlike Tae-hyun, she wasn't hiding her intentions. She looked directly at Zara's unborn child, as though deciding whether it deserved to exist. And then, she spoke 6 words that made Zara's blood run cold. "You'll terminate the pregnancy tomorrow." If you're already wondering who this woman really is, and whether Tae-hyun will stand with her or against her, let me know in the comments. What would you do if you were Zara? And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the Afro K Tales. The biggest twists are still ahead. Zara stared at the elegant older woman as though she had misheard her. The rain continued falling between them. Cars rolled past. Pedestrians hurried along the sidewalk, completely unaware that a woman's future was being decided only a few feet away. Finally, Zara spoke. "I'm sorry." The woman repeated herself, slower this time. "You'll terminate the pregnancy tomorrow." Silence. Then, Zara laughed. Not because anything was funny, because her mind refused to accept what she had just heard. "You think," she whispered, "you think you can tell me what to do with my baby?" The woman's expression didn't change. "I wasn't asking." Zara looked toward Kang Tae-hyun. Surely he would say something. Anything. Instead, he remained completely silent. That silence hurt more than the woman's words. So it was true. He wanted the baby gone. Tears burned behind Zara's eyes. She swallowed them back. "You know what?" She lifted her chin. "I grew up in a neighborhood where people thought poor girls didn't deserve dreams. I survived that. I moved to a country where I barely understood the language. I survived that. I've worked until my hands bled. I survived that too." She placed both hands protectively over her stomach. "But this child is innocent. I don't care if you're billionaires. I don't care if you're royalty. And I definitely don't care if you're the most dangerous family in Korea. I'm not killing my baby." The bodyguards exchanged nervous glances. No one spoke to Madame Kang like that. The older woman sighed. "You have courage." She stepped closer. "So did my daughter." For the first time, emotion flickered across her face. It disappeared almost instantly. "Courage is admirable, but it doesn't change reality." She turned toward Tae-hyun. "Handle this." Without another word, she entered her car. Within seconds, the convoy disappeared into Seoul traffic, leaving only Zara and the man who had shattered her trust. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Finally, Kang Tae-hyun spoke. "Let me drive you home." "No. I need to explain." "You've explained enough." She took one step backward. "If you wanted this baby, you would have spoken." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand." "No." Her voice cracked. "I understand perfectly." She turned and walked away. He didn't stop her, but his eyes followed her until she disappeared into the rain. That night, Zara couldn't sleep. Every sound outside her tiny apartment made her flinch. She locked the door twice, then checked it again. She replayed the conversation over and over. Why had he stayed silent? Why hadn't he defended her? Why hadn't he told his grandmother to leave? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She ignored it. A second later, another call. Then another. 7 missed calls within 5 minutes. Finally, a text message appeared. "Please listen to me. You're not safe." She immediately blocked the number, then switched off her phone. "I don't need your protection," she whispered to the empty room. "I need you to stay away from me." The next morning, she arrived at the cafe earlier than usual. Her manager frowned. "You look terrible." "I didn't sleep." "You should go home." "I can't." Rent was due in 6 days. Pregnant or not, bills never waited. She tied her apron, forced a smile, and got to work. Around lunchtime, the cafe door opened. Every conversation inside stopped. 2 men in tailored suits entered. Not customers. Security. One walked directly to the counter. "Miss Zara." Her heart sank. "What now?" He placed a thick envelope on the counter. "Chairman Kang asked us to deliver this." "I'm not taking it. It contains apartment keys." She frowned. "What? A secured residence?" "No." "Medical insurance?" "No." "A personal doctor?" "No." "A monthly allowance?" She pushed the envelope back toward him. "I said no." The man looked genuinely uncomfortable. "Please, if we return with this, it won't end well for us." "I'm sorry, but I won't accept anything from him." The entire cafe watched in silence. Finally, the bodyguard bowed respectfully. "As you wish." He picked up the envelope, then quietly added, "He'll still protect you." She laughed bitterly. "From who?" The bodyguard hesitated, then answered with 5 words that made her stomach tighten. from people worse than him. Across Seoul, inside the Kang estate, Tae-hyun stood before a wall-sized window overlooking the city. His chief of security entered. "Chairman, report." She refused everything. "I expected that. The apartment, the money, the medical team, everything." He remained silent. "What about surveillance? We've assigned 12 men. 12. Yes." He turned slowly. "Double it." The chief blinked. "Sir, I want 24-hour protection. She must never know they're there. And if anyone gets within 20 meters of her." His voice became ice. "Remove them. Immediately." "Yes, Chairman." The security chief started to leave. "Tae-hyun." He stopped. "There is one more thing." "What?" "We discovered who submitted the abortion paperwork." For the first time all day, Tae-hyun looked interested. "Tell me." "It wasn't Miss Zara." "I know that." "It also wasn't anyone from our organization." His eyes narrowed. "It originated inside the Kang Medical Foundation." Silence. That foundation belonged to only one person. His grandmother. His fingers slowly curled into fists. So, she had already acted without his knowledge. Meanwhile, Zara noticed strange things beginning to happen. The old man who usually harassed her outside the subway station suddenly disappeared. A drunken customer who grabbed her wrist was escorted out before she even called for help. When she missed the last bus home, a taxi appeared almost instantly. This driver refused payment. "The fare has already been covered." "By who?" He simply smiled. "I wasn't told." Everywhere she went, someone seemed to be watching, helping, protecting. She hated it. Yet, a small part of her couldn't deny something. Nothing bad had happened to her since meeting Tae-hyun again. She shook the thought away. No, she wouldn't let herself trust him. Not after what happened. 3 days later, she attended another prenatal appointment. This time, the doctor looked concerned. "Your blood pressure is elevated." "I've been stressed." "I can imagine." The doctor smiled gently. "The baby is still healthy." Zara relaxed. Then the doctor added, "However, given everything that's happened, I recommend avoiding unnecessary travel. And try not to be alone." She almost laughed. If only it were that simple. As she stepped outside the hospital, a little girl accidentally bumped into her. "I'm sorry." The child bowed repeatedly. "It's okay." The little girl smiled, then handed Zara a folded piece of paper. "A man told me to give you this." Before Zara could ask who, the child ran away. Confused, she unfolded it. Only one sentence was written. "They're running out of patience." No name, no signature, nothing else. Her hands began to tremble. Someone wasn't just watching her anymore. Someone was threatening her. And somewhere, hidden behind the dark windows of a black SUV parked across the street, a pair of cold eyes watched everything. Not Tae-hyun's. Someone else's. Someone who smiled after seeing the fear on Zara's face. Someone waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Zara didn't tell anyone about the note. Who could she tell? Her family was thousands of kilometers away in Nigeria. Her closest friend had recently moved to Busan for work. The police? How could she explain that one of the most powerful families in South Korea seemed connected to someone threatening her unborn child? No. She folded the note, slipped it into her purse, and walked home. She never noticed the black sedan following her from a distance. The following evening, the Kang estate was unusually quiet. Chairman Kang Tae-hyun sat alone in his late father's study. The room smelled of old books and cedar wood. On the wall hung a portrait of Kang Song-min, the man who had built both the Kang Group and its underground empire. Beneath the portrait stood Madame Kang. Without turning around, she spoke. "You've been investigating me." Tae-hyun didn't deny it. "You forged medical documents." "I corrected a mistake." His jaw tightened. "A child is not a mistake." She slowly faced him. "You've known that girl for less than 3 days." "I knew enough." She laughed softly. "You've become emotional." No. I've become responsible. Madame Kang walked toward the fireplace. You believe this is about race. You believe I rejected her because she's African. She shook her head. It has nothing to do with her skin. Then what? Her eyes became distant. Because every woman who carries a Kang heir dies. Silence. The words hung heavily between them. Tae-hyun stared at her. What did you say? She looked at the portrait of her late husband. My daughter-in-law. Your mother. Your grandmother. She paused. They all died giving birth. For the first time in years. Fear crossed Kang Tae-hyun's face. Madame Kang continued. The doctors won't tell you. The family hides it. But every generation, the first pregnancy ends the same way. So yes, I ordered the abortion. Because I'd rather lose one unborn child than bury another woman. Tae-hyun's breathing slowed. He had spent his entire life believing his mother died from an unfortunate medical complication. Now, his grandmother was suggesting it was a curse that followed the Kang bloodline. I don't believe in curses. Neither do I, she replied quietly. I believe in history. Across the city, Zara finished closing the cafe. The streets were unusually empty. A cold wind swept through the narrow alley beside the building. She wrapped her coat tighter. Halfway home, she heard footsteps. Not one person, several. Slow, measured. Following her. She stopped. The footsteps stopped. She walked again. So did they. Her heart began pounding. She turned sharply. Nothing. Only empty streets. Maybe she was imagining it. She took another step. A gloved hand suddenly grabbed her shoulder. She gasped. Before she could scream, a familiar voice spoke. Don't turn around. Her entire body froze. Tae-hyun. Keep walking. What are you doing here? They found you. What? Don't ask questions. His voice remained calm. But whatever happens, stay beside me. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. Then, 3 black vans screeched into the street from opposite directions. Doors flew open. Masked men poured out. Not 1. Not 3. Nearly 20. Zara's legs refused to move. One of the attackers shouted, Take the woman! Everything exploded into chaos. The first man rushed forward. Before he reached Zara, Tae-hyun stepped between them. His movements were frighteningly precise. One strike, the attacker collapsed. Another charged. Then another. Within seconds, 3 men lay unconscious. The rest hesitated. They hadn't expected the chairman himself. More black SUVs roared into the street. Tires screamed. Bodyguards flooded the alley. Gunfire echoed in the distance. Pedestrians ran. Store owners slammed their doors shut. The entire neighborhood transformed into a battlefield. Zara stood frozen. She had never seen violence this close before. Never imagined the quiet man she met beside the Han River could move with such terrifying efficiency. Someone grabbed her arm. She screamed. Tae-hyun turned instantly. No! His voice thundered through the alley. He reached them in seconds. Pulling Zara behind him, the attacker drew a knife. Tae-hyun didn't hesitate. The weapon clattered onto the pavement. The masked man collapsed. More attackers retreated toward the vans. Within moments, they disappeared into the night. Silence slowly returned. Only Zara's trembling breaths remained. She looked at Tae-hyun. His white shirt was stained with blood. Not all of it belonged to him. You! Her voice barely worked. You protected me. He looked at her as though the answer were obvious. I told you. You weren't safe. Minutes later, inside a secure vehicle, neither of them spoke. Finally, Zara whispered, Who were they? I don't know yet. You expect me to believe that? I expect you to believe this. He turned toward her. I never ordered anyone to harm our child. The word caught her attention. You called the baby our child. He nodded. Because that's exactly who he or she is. She searched his face. For lies. For manipulation. For calculation. She found only exhaustion. And something else. Fear. Real fear. Not for himself. For her. For the baby. You should have defended me that day. His shoulders dropped. I know. Then why didn't you? He closed his eyes briefly. Because if I had challenged my grandmother publicly, she would have realized how much you already meant to me. And once my enemies know someone matters to me, they stop attacking me. They attack the people I love. Tears filled Zara's eyes. You should have trusted me enough to explain. I was wrong. It was a simple sentence. Yet somehow, it felt heavier than any dramatic apology. The convoy entered massive iron gates. Zara stared through the window. The Kang estate looked less like a mansion and more like a private kingdom. High walls, armed security, beautiful gardens, hidden cameras, luxury beyond imagination. This is where you live? Tae-hyun nodded. For now. So will you? She immediately shook her head. No. It's the safest place in Korea. I don't belong here. Before he could answer, a small voice echoed across the courtyard. Dad! A little girl of about 7 years old came running toward them. She stopped when she saw Zara, then looked down at Zara's stomach. Children have a remarkable ability to notice what adults overlook. The little girl smiled brightly. Is there really a baby in there? Zara blinked. Yes. The child grinned. I've always wanted a little brother. Tae-hyun's face changed completely. The cold Mafia boss disappeared. For just a second, he became nothing more than a father smiling at his daughter. Zara noticed it and quietly realized something. Maybe she had judged only the armor he wore, not the man beneath it. But upstairs, from the second-floor balcony, Madame Kang watched the scene unfold. Her expression remained unreadable. She turned to the family physician standing beside her. Run the tests. The doctor lowered his head. Immediately. If the results are what I fear. She looked once more toward Zara. We're running out of time. If this story has your heart racing, let me know in the comments. Do you think Madame Kang is protecting Zara? Or hiding an even darker secret? And if you're enjoying this journey, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the Afro K Tales, and turn on notifications, because the biggest revelation about the Kang family is still to come. For the first time in years, Zara slept without hearing traffic outside her window. The guest suite overlooked a quiet garden where white camellias swayed in the morning breeze. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, she woke with the uneasy feeling that she was living inside someone else's life. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. Miss Zara. It was the family physician. I've come to examine you. She hesitated before opening the door. The doctor smiled kindly. I'm not here to pressure you. I'm here because the baby's safety matters. After nearly an hour of tests, blood work, and another ultrasound, the doctor quietly removed his gloves. The baby is healthy. Zara smiled with relief. But the doctor's face grew serious. Your pregnancy is becoming high risk much earlier than expected. She looked down at the monitor. The stress you've endured hasn't helped. Can my baby survive? Yes. And so can you. He paused. But only if you avoid more trauma. Outside the room, Madame Kang listened without saying a word. That afternoon, Tae-hyun finally found Zara walking through the estate gardens. She was feeding koi fish in silence. I owe you the truth. She didn't look at him. You owe me much more than that. He accepted the answer. My mother didn't die because of a curse. Zara turned. My grandmother believes she did. But the truth is, he took a slow breath. She died because someone tampered with her medical treatment. Zara frowned. What? My father spent 20 years searching for proof. He died before he found it. So your grandmother blamed the pregnancy. It was easier than believing someone inside our own family murdered her. The realization settled between them. So someone may be trying again. He nodded. And now, they're targeting you. 3 nights later, the truth finally surfaced. One of Tae-hyun's investigators rushed into his office carrying an old archive box. We found it. Inside were hospital records hidden for decades. financial transfers, altered medical reports, security footage. One face appeared repeatedly. Director Choi, the longtime administrator of the Kang Medical Foundation, the same man who still oversaw the family's private hospitals. He was paid. The investigator swallowed. By whom? Before he could answer, the office lights suddenly went dark. Every security alarm in the estate erupted. Red emergency lights flashed across every hallway. A guard shouted through the intercom, "Chairman! Intruders inside the estate!" Zara instinctively covered her stomach. Servants hurried in every direction. Doors slammed. Security teams spread through the mansion. Tae-hyun reached her within seconds. "We're leaving." "What happened?" "They've breached the estate." "I thought this place was impossible to enter." "So did I." He led her toward a hidden elevator concealed behind a bookshelf. As the doors closed, gunfire echoed somewhere above them. The elevator descended deep beneath the mansion. When the doors opened, Zara stared in disbelief. An underground tunnel stretched ahead. "My grandfather built this after the war," Tae-hyun explained. "It leads beyond the estate." They hurried forward. Halfway through, a voice echoed behind them. "Chairman." They turned. Director Choi stepped from the shadows, holding a pistol. His expression remained calm. "I hoped it wouldn't come to this." Tae-hyun moved in front of Zara. "You murdered my mother. I protected the organization. You murdered innocent women. I protected power." He lifted the weapon. "And that child threatens everything." Before he could fire, a sharp voice rang through the tunnel. "No." Madame Kang stood at the entrance. She had come alone. Director Choi looked stunned. "Madam, you served this family for 31 years. I did. And you betrayed it for 30. She slowly raised a small recorder. "I've heard enough." Police sirens echoed faintly above. Director Choi finally understood. It had been a trap. He tried to escape. Security officers surrounded him from both ends of the tunnel. For the first time in decades, the man responsible for generations of tragedy lowered his weapon. Weeks later, the headlines shook South Korea. Senior medical director arrested in decades-long corruption investigation. No mention of the Kang family. No mention of the underground empire. Some secrets would remain buried forever. But one truth finally came to light. The women hadn't died because of fate. They had been victims. Madame Kang spent hours alone in the family chapel afterward. When she finally approached Zara, her voice was softer than ever before. "I owe you an apology." Zara waited. "I allowed grief to become fear. And fear almost cost me another family." Tears filled the older woman's eyes. "I cannot change what I did. But I hope, one day, you'll allow me to know my grandchild." Zara looked at her for a long moment. "Forgiveness takes time." Madame Kang nodded. "I'll wait." 3 months later, the first snow of winter covered Seoul. Inside the maternity ward, Tae-hyun paced endlessly. Business negotiations had never made him nervous. Board meetings never frightened him. But hearing Zara cry during labor left him completely helpless. Hours later, a newborn's cry filled the room. The doctor smiled. A healthy baby girl. Tae-hyun's eyes immediately filled with tears. The nurse placed the tiny child into Zara's arms. Their daughter opened her eyes for only a second, before wrapping impossibly small fingers around her father's hand. He laughed through tears. "I think she already owns my heart." Zara smiled weakly. "I think she owned it long before today." 1 year later, Family Day returned. Not at an elite private school, but at a neighborhood cultural festival. Children painted pictures. Parents laughed. Music filled the park. A little girl with soft curls and bright eyes toddled unsteadily across the grass, straight into Tae-hyun's waiting arms. Zara watched them together and smiled. The powerful chairman who had once believed love was a weakness, now spent his mornings making airplane noises while feeding his daughter breakfast. His greatest victory had never appeared on a balance sheet. It wasn't measured in billions. It wasn't built through fear. It was built through trust, through choosing to stay, through becoming the kind of father his own childhood had never given him. As the sun began to set, Tae-hyun reached for Zara's hand. "This family saved me." She squeezed his fingers. "No." She looked toward their laughing daughter. "We saved each other." And for the first time in many years, the future felt brighter than the past. Thank you for watching. If Zara's courage touched your heart and Tae-hyun's journey reminded you that even broken people can change, tell us in the comments. What was your favorite moment in this story? Don't forget to like, subscribe to the Afro K Tales, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next emotional billionaire romance. Until next time, remember, sometimes the strongest families are the ones people choose to build together.